Welcome to the Farming on Purpose podcast, a podcast for farmers and ranchers ready to shift for a stronger future. Today's challenges in agriculture are new, but the grit and determination required to be successful are not. On the Farming on Purpose podcast, you'll hear how producers of all sizes and practices are moving mountains for things they believe in, all in the name of an industry that keeps growing and innovating for a stronger food system and stronger farm families. I'm your host, Lexi Wright, and I'm excited to discuss where producers are finding success, challenging the status quo, striving for better, and keeping our heritage alive, all while producing the food we depend on. So even though school has officially gone back into session for us, we are still in summer mode because we are wrapping up all of the summer projects. So we have for you another mashup episode, as I'm calling them unofficially, of quotes and ideas pulled together from different interviews that have been on the Farming on Purpose podcast. And these ones that we have put together for you are all about finding your role on the operation or on your own farm and figuring out what that looks like. I have found that there's no one size fits all job description. Honestly, most of our jobs don't come with a job description. You a lot of times step into a role that you don't have a lot of foresight of what it might look like until you're doing it. And then when you're doing it, you realize maybe it doesn't fit you super well and you have to kind of mash and meld some things together to find and make it something that you enjoy and something that is going to fulfill you. And so today's episode is all about looking at examples of how people have done that in very different circumstances and in very different operations, and taking little pieces of what they have done and seeing if it could work for you. I think that's one of the best things about podcasts, is that it gives us little glimpses into other people's lives and lets us see the things that have really made a difference for them. So I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and we will be back before you know it with our regular content of new interviews every week. Well, Richelle, I want to thank you so much for agreeing to come on the Farming on Purpose podcast. I've had so much fun getting started with this, and I think that it's really fitting that you are one of the beginning episodes of the Farming on Purpose podcast, because I've admired your writing and your perspective for a long time, and then had the chance to work with you here in the last couple of years. And so I'm just excited to let people hear more of your thoughts in kind of a different way than they normally would if they follow your blog. You've lived on the ranch most of your life, held a lot of different roles. Do you want to just take a moment to introduce yourself and kind of where you guys are at right now, what you're up to?
Yeah, so thank you. I'm excited to be on the podcast here with you. My name is Richelle, and I live on my parents' cattle ranch, myself and my husband and our two daughters. We live in just outside of Scarborough, Montana, which is just a little ways south of the Canadian border, kind of very north central Montana. And we've been raising cattle with my parents for the last 17 years. And this year has been very different for us. We ended up selling all of our cows, my husband and I, this summer, late spring, early summer, due to drought. We had some leased ground that we run our cattle on, separate from my parents, and there had been no moisture all winter, and there was just no way to be able to keep the cows and allow for my parents to be able to keep their cattle here as well too. So it's been a little bit different. The only thing we kept, my girls have a handful of their own cows and calves, and then we ended up keeping our bulls. So kind of hoping that we're going to be able to get back in and have some cows to run our bulls on next summer. So that's kind of where we're at in a major season of change, and learning how to deal with that. So.
And that's kind of a weird season to be in. I feel like we always I feel like talk about, like keep keep going forward and what's the next thing. But when you're in that season of evaluating and like not being quite sure of what the next step is, that's where we're at currently, kind of as well, for very different reasons than the drought you guys have been going through. But I feel like that evaluation season is kind of a strange one to be in.
It is, and it's difficult. Um, because it's just difficult when you have different generations and different personalities. I'm very emotionally attached to our place and to our cattle, where my husband is able to step away and look at it more from the business side, and which I'm very thankful for. Because I'm all in. I'll do whatever just to be able to keep them because I love this way of life and I love my cows. Um, and that's not always the best business decision. Sometimes you have to know you know, when to let your cards go, I guess, in a sense. And so it's been a very major change for us, and just trying to figure out how to move on and what's going to work best for both families. Because my parents are still here, and we're still trying to figure out how to make it work for them too. So.
Yeah. Juggling the different generations and the having it be, what you love doing every day and what you live for, and still figuring out the business side too. I feel like it's such a hard thing to juggle. And that's why it's so like such a hot topic in our industry is how do we keep all of the people that are involved in the operation successful and still move forward, letting people do what they love. It's the ultimate puzzle, I feel like.
It is. And everybody's situation is so different. And I think that's why it is so difficult, because there's no one size fits all fix for it. We've been working, I say that with air quotations, working into succession plans we've been out here for, I mean, almost, I guess probably more like 15 years that we've had our own cattle. But we've been working with my parents since right after we were married. And the last 10 years, especially, it's been, well, we're trying to figure out how to, get you guys back home. And just, it's difficult when you have a generation that doesn't want, they don't want to really step back, but they don't want to, it's hard to try and figure out where you fit in. And that's kind of where we've been for a long time. And so this year especially has been just kind of figuring out what we can do for ourselves until things change, and we can make some choices at that point. So.
Yeah. And it sounds like you and your husband make a really great team of bringing the heart of the situation from your perspective and his more the business side of the equation to making those decisions. It's important to have both but also hard to balance both. I think my husband and I like swing wildly from one end to the other. We're like, oh, all business or oh, all heart. And it's like finding where to juggle that is hard for us. But sounds like you guys balance each other out well in that.
Yeah, for the most part. And my husband, bless his heart, I think it's easier for him to see it from the business perspective because it's not his family. He came in as the outsider, I guess, and he wasn't raised on a ranch. And so he didn't have that. Well, I've been doing this my whole life. This is what I know. He can look at it and say, well, these are the numbers. He's a hard facts kind of guy. So where I'm not, I am very much like, I don't, as long as somebody knows what the numbers are, which is not a good way to be either. I've been really trying to wrap my brain around that. And I've worked in finance, and I know how it should look and what to do, for other people. But for me, it's just one of those things. And it's like, I want to just go get on my horse. I want to go fix fence. I want to go work cows. And so he constantly reminds me that it is a business, and yes, you can love what you do. But you still have to be sure that at the end of the day, you can pay your bills and support your family, even if it's not working, then something has to change. So that's been really good because I wasn't really raised that way. Like my parents, my dad isn't a big numbers guy. And so I wasn't really raised with the budgeting and marketing is a huge part of being a rancher. And the older I've gotten, the more I've learned that's got to be almost a bigger part of your day than just going through the motions and doing the work. Because at the end of the day, if you can't pay your bills, the work doesn't really matter. The bank is only going to keep you going for so long.
Yeah, hard reality though.
It is. It really is. And it's a sad part of the business, but you still have to, hopes and dreams are great, but you have to be able to finance them. And it's unfortunately, agriculture is so much about the money and how you handle your finances and how you are able to do different things to be able to ensure that there's always money for the next thing and the next generation. And that's really hard if you're not good at that, it's hard to grasp it.
And you and I come at that from kind of two different ends of the spectrum where you grew up on a ranch, but it wasn't really a big talking point, like you said, for your family. For me, I would say like financial management was probably a big talking point for my family, but we were not involved in like farming and ranching. We were more just like a hobby farm type of a thing. And now it's like I almost feel like there's no amount of preparation that can prepare you to handle the finances of a farm or a ranch, but also it doesn't seem like there's that much out there that helps prepare us to tackle those conversations or those plans either. I've struggled with like knowing where to turn to be like, what should I do? What should I be focusing on?
Right. And I would agree with that. I don't know. I can't speak for everyone, obviously. But I feel like a lot of people that grow up in an agriculture background don't grow up knowing what the money situation looks like.
Mm-hmm.
I remember being a kid and it was like taboo to talk about the bills and to talk about the checkbook, and we didn't discuss it. And it's unfortunate because I don't think you have to know your parents' whole financial situation, but I think just in general for younger kids and kids in college to understand, there's more to it than just coming back home and raising cows. Mm-hmm. If that was all there was to it, everybody do it. If it was that easy, there'd be no issue. There'd be no family farms getting sold out and people having to retire and sell their cows out. But there's so much more to it. And, I didn't go to school necessarily for agriculture business. And so when I was in college, it was more, horse education and more the nitty gritty of, like taking care of livestock and what to feed them. And so the money side of it wasn't really talked about there again, like there weren't resources. We didn't really talk about how to pay for all of these different things and where to go if you need lending. And I think that's really unfortunate. Because so many times we just keep doing what we've always been doing. Yeah. And we look, especially if we're working with our parents, we look to them to be kind of you look to them for guidance. And no matter what the situation is, our tendency is just to keep doing what we've always done and what we know. And that's not always going to be helpful for moving forward. So I would agree. It's really a difficult thing to know where to start. it can be very overwhelming. And it gets, I know for us for a while, it was just like, well, we're just, we're going to go to work and do our job and have cows on the weekends and that kind of thing. And now I'm looking back at choices we've made and things we've done that it's like, we should have pushed that or asked more questions. And not that our situation would be different, um, but just knowing who to, getting some different ideas and being able to do more than just raise crops or just raise cattle is so important.
Yeah.
And being able to bring ideas to the table and let the other generation or the other family members that you work with be able to kick it around and think about it until it maybe becomes their idea. Um, is helpful. And I think just being able to have open communication without a lot of expectations
Mhm.
um, is I wish we, at least for me, because I was always really good about having ideas, but then expecting it to go the way I wanted it to, without really thinking about how the other side of that coin would look. So yeah, it can be very overwhelming to know how to how to make it work.
Mhm. Very overwhelming. And those expectations that, like you said, you kind of approach situations with, like, well, this is how I want it to go. It's hard to know where to draw the line there because it's like at some point, you don't want to be the pushover who always gets the short end of the stick and who, you never make any progress on your goals and what you guys want to do because you just always fade to the back. But at the same time, you don't want to be the one that's not considering what other people want. So it's like hard to know what to stand firm on when it comes to those things, I feel like.
Yeah, definitely. I guess my biggest advice, if someone else is like kind of in that situation, would be to be patient and, don't give up on those ideas that you have the first time someone says no. Um, Sometimes it takes a really long time for other people to soften to ideas that are what you maybe don't feel is a big change, but it could be a really small thing. Like I think a certain thing is really small, but to my dad, those were huge changes that he was not okay with. Um, and you can't get upset from my personal experience. Um, if they tell you no, don't get upset about it. Maybe do some more research, come back to the drawing board and approach it differently. If you can prove to them that, this is a really good idea, if you have the opportunity to say, split your cow herd off from theirs and prove it, make it work, show them that the option is there and it's not a bad idea. Um, Sometimes they'll say, oh, well, maybe these kids are onto something or it might flop. And then from your experience that it doesn't work. So, but just don't stop trying, but and don't give up, but don't be discouraged the first 50 times they don't go along with it. Um, just roll with it. Sometimes that's the best thing I found is to just not and don't take it personally because sometimes it doesn't have anything to do with us. It's more to do with change being really scary for some people. So,
Mhm. Today I'm here with Marli Scarborough, and I'm so excited to talk to her because I've been following her on Instagram and love some of the things that you are bringing up, Marli, topic wise, just about your day to day life and how you're kind of approaching that. I know we share a lot of shared interests in like productivity and time tracking and being super efficient. So I'm so glad you agreed to come chat with me today. Do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself to our guests today?
Yeah. So I'm a fifth generation rancher. I live in West River, South Dakota. I live on the family ranch with my dad and my two brothers. And um, I say I'm a rancher and talk about the cattle mostly, but we do have crops too. It's just more interested in the cattle. So, and then on the side, I have been sharing on Instagram just about daily life on the ranch. And so haven't gotten too far into that, but just trying to kind of show people what we do every day. So,
Yeah. What got you started sharing more of what you guys do there?
I've always kind of for a while now, I really like writing and just sharing my thoughts that way. And so I had a blog for a while and had kind of quit doing that, but just kind of was feeling like there's just so much disconnect between consumers and just knowing what we do on the ranch every day, what it really looks like to raise cattle. And so it's pretty easy to just pick up your phone when you're out there doing stuff and just start taking pictures and videos and just kind of explain a little bit of what actually goes on in day to day life on the ranch.
For sure. Well, advocacy is so important because it's becoming more and more apparent. I feel like with social media, just how removed so many people are from that production agriculture experience, whether, it was generations ago on their family or just they personally have never been part of that or been around it. Um, so what is your day to day? I know you said you guys do crops and cattle. What's your day to day stuff look like for you on the farm? Like, what's your day to day role?
Yeah. Well, it definitely varies by season. So right now, actually, we're kind of in a routine where my dad feeds cows every morning, and I actually will kind of do some office work at that point, and then I help out with the boys a lot, just raising them, and so I'm in the house a little more doing that, and then I'll get out and do some of the feeding later in the day, do that kind of thing. I would say in the summer when we're busier, we kind of divide things up more evenly where I'm out checking cows and stuff. And then when we are harvesting and busy in the field, I'm part of that too. So yeah, definitely varies by season and it all just flexes depending on what we're doing every day.
Yeah. Have you guys always been a diversified operation, or has that been something that's kind of grown over time, or what's that look like for you?
Yeah, I think we've always been pretty much about half and half cattle and crops. I remember growing up, I was like, hate sitting in a tractor. Why do we have to have crops? Why can't we just have cows? And as I've gotten older, I've obviously realized a little bit more about why it's important to have both. But yeah, still love the cows.
Yeah. um, so it sounds like you take on some of the like you've mentioned office work. Did that become your role just out of like necessity or because you were good at it or you wanted to do it, or how did that happen?
Yeah. So actually, the unique thing about our situation is my mom actually passed away unexpectedly about a year ago.
Oh.
And so that was really her thing was the book work a lot. And so I've taken over that in the past year. Um, and that is something that I would like to see down the road, maybe figure out some ways to maybe outsource that a little bit. But so far, it's just kind of been me learning the ropes. And I just really want to figure out how to make it all work.
Mm-hmm. It's a
Doing
big
that.
responsibility, and especially when it kind of lands in your lap,
Mhm.
type circumstances that you didn't necessarily intend to take on that role, but here it is. Um, yeah, that's hard to figure out kind of how to balance that. I'm glad it sounds like you are working through it though.
Yeah, it's definitely been a good learning experience. Just, I always kind of knew in my head, what the income and expenses look like, but I'd never like sat down on a weekly basis and was seeing exactly all the things that are coming in and out. And
Mm.
just getting my head around that better has been a good learning experience.
Yeah, that's good. Knowing the numbers of the operation, I feel like when I started paying more attention to that for us, And we're small. So I'm sure it's like much more for a larger operation like you guys, but I feel like I have so much more clarity about the day-to-day things and how that adds up over time to like equal the bigger picture.
Right. Right. Yeah. And I have lately just in this little bit of the time management thing that we talked about, but just trying to figure out where we can change things to manage my time better. And it feels like this bookwork thing should be something I should be able to pass off and outsource. But it also feels like you lose a little bit of control that way too. And being able to be in those numbers every day and really seeing what's going on. So there's give and take there.
True. And a big amount of trust too, of like,
Yeah.
I trust you, other person that we're inviting to do this, to tell me there's something wrong.
Yes.
Fix. Oh gosh.
Yeah.
Well, so you came back to the ranch. Sorry, I said farm earlier. I know, like, that's a location based thing for me. I call everything a farm. But so you came back. What did that kind of process look like for you?
Yeah. So I actually, like, right away out of high school, I just started working on the ranch. I didn't go to college or anything. And then it was a couple years later, I just kind of wanted to try something different. So I moved to Rapid City, which one of the two biggest cities in South Dakota. So it was kind of just getting away to the city for a little bit, I guess. But just to live somewhere else and do something else for a little while, I kind of had in the back of my mind I might do something with writing or something like that. Or I really, when I left, had no idea what was going to happen. I just needed to kind of get away enough to figure it out. And so after about a few months of that, I kind of started to realize that I didn't dislike living in the city, and that I just was never going to love it quite as much as the ranch. And there weren't some of the frustrations. It was just kind of middle of the road. But the ranch is definitely where my passion is. And so I did stay for a year just to like make myself like say I'd done it for a year. But then I ended up coming back in, let's see, it was the fall of 2019. So it was kind of interesting timing because I was just kind of starting to figure things out here. And then obviously COVID hit and everything kind of changed. And I was kind of stuck here for a little while. And so, yeah, but I bought some cows of my own that spring. And then just ever since, I've just kind of been working in more. So
very cool.
Yeah.
Well, and that's such a cool experience that you did that. That takes in my mind, I like imagining myself making a decision like that. I'm like, that's a big decision to step away and to have those conversations with your family that like, no, I need to go try this for myself and just see what I discover type of a day.
Mm-hmm.
So when you came back after like straight from high school, what did that decision process look like? Did you always know, or was that always the plan, or what did that kind of look like?
I was homeschooled through high school, so I was always here working anyway. And then actually just a couple months after I graduated from high school, we had a hired hand that had been here for about 6 years, and he actually quit just a few months after I graduated from high school. So that was kind of a natural transition for me to be able to take on more responsibilities. So
Yeah.
I don't know that there was a whole lot of thought that went into that. I just knew that college wasn't the direction I wanted to go. And so I just I think during that time, I was just like, well, I'm here until I figure out something else. And so it was just kind of where it naturally went after high school.
Yeah. It sounds like God's timing with the end situation. Cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
Very good. So when you I guess it's kind of more of a seamless transition. You were probably helping out a lot in different roles throughout high school, being home, and then had to just continuing on instead of stepping into a lot of new roles. Were there anything that changed when you kind of took a bigger role after high school?
I don't know that there was a whole lot. Um, Now that I'm having to think about it, I'm realizing how long ago that was.
Right. Time flies.
Yes. Um, I think there were some things like I had never driven truck up until that point. I remember learning to do that summer and um just definitely having to be more available. I mean, with there being one less person around just during cabbing and stuff was harder to leave, stuff like that. But, yeah.
Okay, so you kind of had a transitioning role or a role that's changed over time, and especially it sounds like when your mom passed away and you kind of took more of that on. What have you learned going through those different seasons, or what have those seasons looked like for you, and kind of just how have you felt about it?
Yeah. Um, yeah, it's just there's just been so much trying to get my phone to unlock here. I had some notes. But um yeah, there's just been so many opportunities for learning in this season. And just especially with the family dynamic. My brothers are 17 and 9. So
Oh,
that's yes. So um there's a lot of figuring things out with that too.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
a I didn't realize that. I assumed that they were older. I don't know why I assumed that. But yeah, that's a whole other
Unusual.
role.
Yeah. But yeah. So there's, I think, just on the family side and figuring out the time where we spend our time is probably has been a bigger thing than the ranch. Because I mean, my mom loved the cattle and was outside quite a bit, but she didn't have a ton of stuff in the outside work that was really like her responsibility. So that really, we kind of divide things up the same between my dad and I and our roles. So it's really been more the house stuff, the book work, and doing stuff with the boys that we've had to figure out.
Yeah. I feel like, and maybe you could have more insight on this, but I feel like sometimes when we talk about family farms, especially when multiple family members are involved, we have kind of this resistance to having some of those processes in place because we're like, well, we're family. So we'll just figure it out together. Or it's a farm. It's not like this corporatized entity that needs to have all of these systems and everything. We're just a family farm and we can figure it out together. Do you feel like that's something you run into?
Oh, yeah, frequently. I was just working with a family. We were doing like a monthly consulting type thing of work, and they would come to me every month with different issues and things. And the last time that we spoke, it was kind of a disagreement about who wanted to do what and what type of tech they were going to use and one didn't want to use it, etc. And this happens frequently with generational farming. And I think the biggest piece is everybody wants to feel heard. So the first thing you have to do is almost like sit down and be like, okay, well, what's going on for you? What is the end result you're looking for? Okay, what's going on for this side? What's the end result they're looking for? Right? And can we find something that's going to meet in the middle? Can we try introducing, I'm just going to use tech as the example. Can we try introducing this piece of tech to solve this one issue that's been really challenging for us and time consuming and see how it goes? And then come back and we'll talk about it. What worked, what didn't work, what did we like, what didn't we like? And sometimes it does take a few different solutions. And that's what people think. Like once you implement, it has to be like 100% in. Well, no, not everybody wants that and not everybody can work with that. So it's like, let's try before you buy in a sense, right?
Yeah.
Test it out, see what's working. And communication is a huge thing when it comes to, any business, to be honest, but generational businesses especially. It's like you really got to understand each other and understand the pushback.
Yeah. Because you have to address that pushback Otherwise, it becomes the one person who wants it to be different, their responsibility to do it, when everyone else is like, oh, well, you can do it that way, but we're not going to.
100%. Yeah. And that does happen too. And it's like, well, maybe we need to assign jobs. Maybe we need to have an understanding that, you're going to take care of the customer pickups. So you can manage that however you see fit. And that's part of what we did with my last clients is they had different team members or family members assigned to different parts of the business and they could run it as they saw fit.
Mm.
It was just what they had to do that worked, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And assigning those job roles, again, it's a little bit of a system. It's not like a huge complex system, but it is like a little bit of formality, even in a family business, that sometimes is necessary.
Yeah. And we wrote out what everybody's job consisted of so that it's kind of like a standard operating procedure in a sense, or like not a how-to manual, but it's like, what does that job entail? So that each person on the farm or on the team could see what you are actually doing in the day. Because I might hear, oh, well, you run a podcast. Well, that sounds easy. But you're like, no, to run my podcast, I have these 25 things I need to do. And then I need to market. And marketing is a whole nother piece of the business, right? Like you don't know what you don't know. Yeah. So we have to make sure that we're empowering the person who's responsible to take control of that, but also inform us of what's going on so that we have a better understanding.
Yeah, definitely.
So, and then if they're not there, if they're not there, somebody else needs to understand what the job entails. If I'm sick, and this is, I think, what a lot of farmers forget about, if you're sick or somebody gets injured, things happen in life that are unpredictable. What's your backup plan? Mm. Who's going to do that work? Realistically. And
that's hard. That's because it's like a lot of times there's not the space or the bandwidth for someone else to take that on. So it's like, what do you do then? What do you tell people to do in that scenario?
I encourage every single person who runs a business, it does not matter to me what kind of business you run, that you have your processes mapped out. Whether that's on a sheet of paper, when I do social media, this is what I do. When I'm feeding the cows, this is what I do. This is where the bucket is. This is where the feed is. This is where that, etc. Just write it all out. And then you can always, which I do encourage as well, is timing your tasks.
Today, I'm here with Letty Nickel, and Letty is a fourth-generation farmer, rancher, and she is an entrepreneur, a wedding venue owner, an Airbnb owner, and a member of her community, proudly, in Southwest Kansas. And I'm really excited to have you here today, Letty, just to share what your experience and journey back to the farm has been like. I think it's a journey that a lot of people want to make, but are very apprehensive about making because of all the things that sometimes come with it and figuring out how you fit and what's your place there. There's a lot that goes into it. And I know your journey has had its own ups and downs and bumps and figuring out along the way. So yes. Welcome to the podcast. If you want to just tell us a little bit more about yourself and kind of how your journey started, I think that'd be a great place to start.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Lexi, for having me on. I'm excited to be here. And I love advocating for the industry, and I love sharing my story because hopefully it inspires others like me to, others who might be in the same shoes to actually jump and actually make the decision on moving back home. So I graduated from college. It's been it feels like it's been forever ago, but it hasn't been that long ago. In 2017. And I went through the TCU ranch management program. I was actually at OSU prior to that and was in an animal science major and was going to go on to vet school, but something shifted in me and I knew I wasn't supposed to go to vet school anymore. And I don't know exactly why, or I didn't know why at the time. It's hindsight 2020, you look back and now you understand why. But I applied for the TCU ranch management program, excuse me. And in March of that year, I had found out when I was in the middle of the program is during spring break, my dad had a brain tumor that had came back. So I knew I was supposed to go back to the operation, but I didn't really know how to go back because it wasn't big enough to support another family member. It really could only support my parents. Um, so I decided to take a feed yard job, which was it's pretty local to where I'm at. It was 2 hours away from home still, which was a lot better than 8 hours away from home. So I knew I could make the journey on the weekends to come back home and help wherever I needed to, or during harvest or whatever. So I took a feed yard job, and I told them I couldn't start until after harvest that year. It's because my dad was going through radiation, and once he got done with radiation, that's when I started my job. So I'd still help on the weekends and everything, and trying to juggle a full-time job with part-time job. Everybody does it now. Like it's part of making it work whenever you are trying to expand and grow and make it sustainable for a family to live on eventually. So I was working two jobs, working my full-time job, coming home on the weekends to help my family. And then I eventually transferred to a different feed yard. And I'm so thankful for my feed yard experience because it taught me so much. It taught me a lot of the accounting side that I didn't know, the business aspect. Um, and I think something that's the older generation might struggle with a little bit is just like the business side of things. We didn't really necessarily go to school for business. We went to like the hard knocks business, and learning to adapt, and which is so valuable. But at the end of the day, we have to make it sustainable. And part of sustainability, I hate the buzzword sustainable because there's so many different things. And a lot of times we want to throw in animal welfare, which is a huge aspect. But at the end of the day, it has to be a sustainable business too. So, that's kind of how I got moved back home. And then in 2019, really, I was just trying to do too much. I was growing a meat company. I was in the feed yard full time. I had just moved up. I was a manager in a manager position. And then we were getting ready to go into the growing season, planting corn, milo, all of the crops. And I knew I had to be home to help my dad because he just couldn't do it anymore by himself. So I stepped away from my feed yard job and then I created a different entity, MC Bar Meat Co., where I would buy my parents' calves and sell beef directly to make ends meet for me to be able to move back home. So that's a little bit background, and through that, several different adventures evolved. I had just remodeled my house, so I was like, and I was single. I didn't have a family yet, and I was like, there's really not a good hotel for people to stay. People coming back home to visit on the Christmas holidays and that kind of stuff. So I was like, I'm just going to Airbnb my house and see what happens. And little did I know I was going to be kicked out of my house 3 weeks out of the 4 weeks at the month. And I was like, okay, something has to change here. I love my parents because I'd pack up all my stuff and just move home. I didn't have a lot of personal items that really mattered. So I just go stay with my parents. And I got to a point, I was like, I love my parents, but once you flee, like you want to flee, you don't want to move back in with your parents. So I ended up that following year in 2020, we started the grain or the round top, a wedding venue, which 2020 was a horrible year to start a wedding venue. But we made it work somehow. And the grain bin, I always knew like long term, this was going to be an Airbnb. Like it was my vision. It's kind of what I focused on. And the following year, I was able to finish it. At first, it was just a bar for the wedding venue. We had this 12-foot opening and an awning for people to kind of come up and serve drinks or serve meals out of. And then the following year, I was able to finish it. It takes time to build up capital whenever you're young and just starting with no money. So it took me a while to get to where I have gotten over the last 5 years. But then the Airbnb is really the cash cow of the wedding venue, and it really pays a lot of my bills that I never thought possible. So it allows me to still do what I love on the farm, on the ranch, and be able to work day in and day out there and also pull an income. So I don't pull an income from the operation. The Airbnb is really what provides for me. And MC Bar Meat Co. we've kind of slowed down on just because of, operating costs have gotten so expensive and beef prices are ridiculous. So, and I personally don't like shipping a lot. I really just love focusing on my local people. And I think that's part of the whole sustainability aspect that we talk about is local food, local produce, even if you are in a food desert. So
Definitely. Wow. That's quite the journey to be to have all that evolve so quickly.
yes, absolutely.
When your dad, when you guys found out about your dad's brain tumor, was that like, did that push your decision to come back? Because I know you had said you didn't know or you
Yes.
think.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I left for college, I actually was like, I am never coming back home. This is the last place I want to come back. And it's funny how in my life I have said, never will I do that. And it's funny how I eat my words every time. So I have stopped saying, never will I do this or never will I do that because recently we just, like during the wintertime and stuff, the round top's pretty low key. It's not busy at all. So my husband wanted to change the lighting so he could work in the round top. And I was like, I told myself I would never pull farm equipment in the round top. And now I have farm equipment in the round top. So it's funny how never say never because you don't ever know what life is going to throw at you. So
Yeah.
it was definitely a big factor in moving home. You know, it was the main reason why I moved back and just to be close, to be able to help. And I'd help like run budgets or, you know, from afar do the bookwork type of things that I could when I was at my job in Texas or at my job in northwestern Kansas kind of, or yeah, it was the main reason I moved back home.
Yeah. And when you came back, was that something that you kind of fully stepped into and were like, okay, I'm back. I'm going to figure out how to stay? Or was it like, well, we'll see?
Well,
No.
yeah, it was I knew when I moved home, it was a long-term thing. Like, and I waited to move home until I had no other option, really. I mean, I had a bunch of options where I was doing great in my career, but I was in a really low point in my life. Like, I was very ultra successful in my career, but just my personal life was just a wreck. And I had to get away from the environment I wasn't in up there. So it actually pushed me back home. And I'm super thankful because it healed me. And I knew once I moved home, I was home for good. So everything I built was like a long-term vision for my future family, like MC Bar Meat Co. and the Round Top, the Airbnb, because I knew I wanted, like, my end goal is like to be a stay-at-home mom, but I'm so driven. Like I cannot just stay inside, which is a place that everybody's got their drive, but I am a very hands-on person. So I knew I had to have my own little niche to work on and my own little thing to work on. And I love building fence. I love like the day-to-day stuff. And I also love the business stuff. So there's a happy balance with everything. So I started building intentionally when I moved home for my future.
If you've enjoyed spending time with us today, please take a moment to review the podcast on Apple Podcasts or join the conversation on social media. Do you have a topic you would like to discuss or know someone with a story to share? Apply to be a guest on the podcast at farmingonpurpose.com. You can follow the host of Farming on Purpose, Lexi, on your favorite social media platforms for more content by searching for Farming on Purpose. And remember, if you look around your table and aren't inspired by the people there, it's time to find a new seat.